Stephen Miller has, against all odds, become a big advisor to the president on issues of immigration and related topics. He's been his defender in the media occasionally, and along the way, from things that he's said and policies that he's advocated for, many have criticized him for being apparently a white nationalist. Those people have gotten criticized in turn. When Ilhan Omar declared that he was a white nationalist, she was attacked pretty vigorously. Well, now we have an investigation showing that he did quite a bit of work in emails to places like Breitbart to push a pretty obviously white nationalist narrative. So this Southern Poverty Law Center report draws on more than 900 emails, which is just too many emails. I would never want to send that many. 80% of which touched on the issues of immigration or race that he exchanged with former Breitbart editor Katie McHugh between March of 2015 and June of 2016. So in the beginning part of this, he's an aide to Jeff Sessions, a guy who's totally unimpeachable on these sorts of topics.
My God, Jeff Sessions the worst. Like that's the way in. Jeff Sessions, known as way, like before a Trump era, was like really way too, Mr. Racist guy for Washington. They just thought he was a weirdo.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that came up? I mean, look, you can, first of all, you should definitely go to Southern Poverty Law Center, read the report because there's a ton to it, but I want to touch on some of the highlights. So Miller sent a story from the white nationalist website VDare to McHugh on October in 2015. White nationalist Pete Brimlow founded VDare in 1999. The website regularly traffics in the white genocide or great replacement myth, which suggests that non-white people are being systematically and deliberately wiping white people off the planet.
And white people are supposed to wipe people off the planet. They're taking our job.
Exactly. Now that back in 2015, 2016 was the sort of thing that if you trafficked in that idea, people would be like, what, are you out of your mind? This is weird white supremacist conspiracy theory stuff. But in the intervening years, it pops up all the time on Tucker Carlson and Laura Ingram's show. It's been very normalized. But Stephen Miller was a fan of this sort of stuff going back years.
Right. And but even in like weird places that you wouldn't expect it. The other day, Laura Ingraham just said something about impeachment. We have to fight back to like defend our heritage. To
defend our heritage.
Protect our, like what? What is that? What are you talking about?
Yeah. She hates identity politics. That's what she hates. She just wants to defend our heritage from impeachment. But anyway, so look, that's bad that he's using VDare, which it's not like we found out later that it's a white nationalist site. It was a white nationalist site at the time. He was a fan of it. He was browsing it for articles and he was sharing them with people at Breitbart. But also, this is one of the most obvious things, and it pops up with a lot of people, including Steve Bannon. It is their love for a particular book, and that book is Camp of the Saints. So back in September of 2015, he emailed recommending this 1973 novel, Camp of the Saints, which has been upheld by nativists and the alt-right as a cautionary tale about the effects of immigration. The book portrays brown-skinned immigrants from India as savages who eat their own feces and invade the white world of Europe. The basic idea of the book is that a huge flotilla of immigrants from other parts of the world come and invade Europe and take over all of their countries and rape and kill everyone and make the Queen of England marry her daughter to a Pakistani guy or something like that. It's one of the most explicitly racist books of the last half century. And so Stephen Miller loves it, Steve Bannon loves it. Racists from all over love this book. They don't often read, but when they do, they read Camp of the Saints.
When they're not reading Mein Kampf of the Saints.
Exactly. Oh, and by the way, in case it's not obvious from the description, in this book, there's so much that's amazing in this book. A white woman is raped to death by brown-skinned refugees. A nationalist character shoots and kills a pro-refugee leftist over his support of race mixing. And because the metaphors in this book are really subtle, all of the liberals in Europe who are trying to be nice to the flotilla of immigrants, they greet them on the beach and are trampled to death by all of the immigrants coming ashore. And so that happened. And anyway, look, he's sharing that. Now, the reason he was talking about it was because the Pope was saying something about borders at the time. And so he emailed to McHugh saying, you see the Pope saying West must in effect get rid of borders. Someone should point out the parallels to Camp of the Saints. Breitbart did that 18 days later, did an article about how it's similar to the Camp of the Saints. Because Breitbart too loves this book and doesn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, all the stuff. So this is the smoking gun, by the way, when it comes to Stephen Miller. We had all had feelings about it. We all kind of knew it from his rhetoric. People had pointed out his history and his career trajectory, kind of swinging from racist branch to branch of government. And now we have this trove of emails. And there's just one little bit from the original report that I thought was fun, is that the reporter was, quote, unable to find any examples of Miller writing sympathetically or even in neutral tones about anybody who is non-white or foreign-born.
Yeah.
Like, they went through these 900 emails, and at no point did they say, like, did he say one person who wasn't white was fine?
Yeah.
And that's it. And that's who's pulling the levers of government. And so we need to go after this guy and get him out of government. It is essentially an email full of Klan hoods that we just found.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and in terms of getting him out, we're gonna return to that in just 1 minute, but just a couple more quick pieces of evidence just because I found it to be interesting. In a June 2015 email, Miller suggested that the beginning of Immigrant Heritage Month could pose a, quote, good opportunity to remind people about the heritage, again, that word, established by Calvin Coolidge, which covers 4 decades of the 20th century. So Calvin Coolidge was very Stephen Millerish when it comes to immigration and established a law significantly cutting down non-European immigration. That immigration plan now, from our point of view, looks really bad, but at the time, it did have its enthusiasts and its fans, one of which was Adolf Hitler, who in Mein Kampf wrote about that law as being a model for what Germany should do on immigration. And that's what Stephen Miller is looking back to and saying, that's a great time, that's our heritage, let's talk about it during Immigration Month, or Immigrant Heritage Month. We should talk about this Hitler-approved immigration law. And then finally, one other thing. There was this mass shooting at Umpqua Community College, you might recall. At the time when it came out that this mass shooter had been spreading white supremacist literature and alt-right stuff, he was one of those sorts of guys. Miller was really incensed about this guy, but not about that stuff, about one other aspect that people weren't focusing on. So he emailed saying, the shooter is described as mixed race and born in England. Any chance of piecing that profile together more, or will it all be covered up? And then he follows up saying, your editorials need to make that the lead. Why aren't people saying that this guy who's spreading alt-right propaganda is mixed race? So this is who Stephen Miller is. That's all you need to know. And if you need to know what being a white supremacist of this form does to you, look at a picture of Stephen Miller. It is corrosive. He's younger than me.
Yeah, he's 11.
He's 11 years old.
11 years old.
Most people don't know that.
Yeah. And yeah, he was, I don't know, it's eating away from him in the inside. It's very frustrating, just the idea that he thinks that because someone is mixed race, now that that's enough. And you need to point it out, not the substance of all the stuff he communicated online or the actions that he took.
The murders.
Literally what he is genetically. So you're trying to look past his deeds toward his genetic makeup, and that is exactly white supremacist. But I can't underscore this enough. He is pulling the levers of power, and maybe the best thing to happen to Stephen Miller is for this to come out this week.
Yeah,
because
maybe.
it is going to. This is one of the only shows that will mention it at all.
Yeah,
let alone in the first half of the show.
But there are people who are focusing on it, and so to what you were saying before, Ilhan Omar tweeted, as I said earlier this year, Stephen Miller is a white nationalist, and now we have the emails to prove it. This type of racism and hatred has no place in our government. Miller needs to step down.
So Miller, who is the guy who did all this white supremacist stuff, when Ilhan Omar pointed out the things we already knew about him, they called her anti-Semitic.
Exactly, and AOC has started a petition to ask to get him out of office. So if you search demand Stephen Miller's resignation, that should come up. And so good job on them on a news cycle that is admittedly packed with other stuff. They're not gonna let this guy get away with staying as an advisor to the president on immigration issues when he is an insane racist on these issues. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.